It started with a group photo on Facebook. A long table set with sparkling cutlery, smiling faces, the soft glow of candles, and bowls of steaming jollof rice. Everyone was there, her husband's parents, siblings, cousins, even little nieces and nephews. Everyone except her. Amoka stared at the photo for almost a minute, waiting for her own image to appear, like maybe she had missed herself somehow. But no. She wasn't in it. Because she wasn't there. Because no one told her there was a dinner. She turned to her husband, Nonso, who was sitting on the couch, distractedly tapping on his phone. "Did you know about this dinner?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked up, puzzled. "What dinner?" She turned the phone to him. He squinted at the image, his expression slowly changing from confusion to disbelief. "Wait, this was today?" "Yes," she said quietly. "Apparently." Nonso stood slowly, running a hand over his shaved head. "No one said anything to me. At least, not directly. My mom did mention something vague about just a small gathering, but she didn't say when." Amoka nodded, fighting the lump forming in her throat. This wasn't the first time she felt the chill of exclusion. From the first day she married into the Obieka family, there had been subtle signs. The way her mother-in-law barely met her gaze. The way her sister-in-law once muttered, "She's not really one of us," when she thought Amoka wasn't listening. She had told herself to be patient. That love would bridge the gap. That with time, they'd see her as family. But time, it seemed, was only building a wall thicker. The first dinner she hadn't been invited to was passed off as an oversight. The second, as a mix-up. But this was deliberate. Nonso paced the room, his brows knitted in disbelief. "This is not right. This is really not right." Amoka sat still, her eyes locked on the image of that perfect dinner table. A table where her place had been purposely left vacant. The next day, Nonso did something that made Amoka's breath catch. He called a family meeting. Without telling Amoka, he summoned his entire family to their home. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't make accusations. He simply printed out the photo from the dinner, placed it on the table, and said, "This is the last time my wife will be treated like a stranger." There was an awkward silence. His mother cleared her throat. His sister rolled her eyes. But he didn't flinch. He continued, "If you don't consider her family, then you've lost a son too." Gasps flew across the room like startled birds. His father tried to intervene, but Nonso stood firm. Amoka, who had been listening from the kitchen, felt both fear and awe. Fear that this could break something permanently. Or that her husband had finally taken a side, and it was hers. But this was just the beginning. Because when a family draws a line in the sand, the storm doesn't wait long to rise. The aftermath of the confrontation was a heavy silence that stretched across days. The Obieka family group chat, once buzzing with jokes and daily updates, went eerily quiet. Nonso acted like nothing had happened, but Amoka could sense the storm brewing inside him. He moved through the house like a man torn between guilt and resolve. His phone rang less frequently, and when it did, he often ignored it. One Sunday, a week after the showdown, his sister Chioma came by unannounced. She stood at the door with arms crossed, sunglasses hiding her eyes. "So, this is what it has come to?" she asked, barely glancing at Amoka. Nonso didn't invite her in. "Chioma, I told everyone where I stand. And you think you're a hero now? Because you humiliated our parents in their own son's house." "No," he said. "I'm not a hero. I'm just a man protecting his wife." Chioma scoffed and walked away, her heels clicking like gunshots on the pavement. Amoka watched from the hallway, heart pounding. It had taken everything in her not to hide upstairs during the exchange. She had lived most of her marriage walking on eggshells, praying to be accepted, trying to prove her worth. But now, For the first time, someone had stood up for her, and she wasn't sure how to carry that power. Nonso came back inside, his jaw clenched. "You shouldn't have to deal with this," he said, finally looking her in the eyes. "We'll be fine. We'll build our own peace." But peace did not come easily. Nonso was removed from the family business WhatsApp group. He wasn't invited to his cousin's wedding. His father, who once called him every Sunday morning without fail, stopped picking up his calls. The weight began to press down on them both. Their laughter grew shorter, their nights quieter. The silence of rejection had crept into their marriage like a slow, poisonous fog. One night, Amoka found Nonso sitting in the dark, staring out of the window. "Did I make a mistake?" he asked. His voice was soft, uncertain. "Choosing you over them." It felt like a knife twisted in her chest. She knelt beside him and held his hand. "You didn't choose me over them, Nonso. You chose what's right. That shouldn't be a mistake." He squeezed her hand, and they sat there, not saying another word. A few days later, a letter came. Handwritten. From Nonso's mother. "Nonso, we raised you to be loyal. But loyalty to your wife shouldn't mean disloyalty to your blood. If she truly loved you, she would not drive you from your family. Think about that." Amoka read the words with trembling hands. That night, she packed a small bag. Not to leave him, but to leave the house for a few days. "I want you to breathe," she told him. "I want you to think, without pressure. I love you, Nonso. Enough to step back if you need to find your peace again." Nonso stared at her, stunned. He opened his mouth to protest, but she raised her hand gently. "I'll be at my sister's." And with that, she left, not out of weakness, but out of love. Amoka's sister's house was quiet, a modest bungalow tucked away in a corner of Sorale. For 3 days, she stayed there, no drama, no pressure, just space. Time to think. Time to heal. Each night, she replayed the events over and over again. The exclusion. The confrontation. The bitter silence that followed. She wondered if maybe she had, in her quiet endurance, played a role in the growing chasm. She had been too silent. Too patient. Too willing to shrink herself just to fit in. But love shouldn't require erasure. On the 4th night, Nonso came. He stood at the gate for several minutes before her sister let him in. Amoka stepped out of the house to find him standing there with a food flask in his hand. "Jollof rice," he said, smiling weakly. "I made it myself. Please don't judge the salt level." Amoka smiled in spite of herself. He handed her the flask and said nothing for a while. Then, "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began. "And I realized something. I didn't lose my family. I exposed them. I exposed how conditional their love was. How acceptance had terms and small print. You didn't drive me away from them, they pushed me for choosing decency." Amoka's eyes welled up, but she didn't interrupt. "I wanted to fix it," he continued. "I thought if I explained enough, reasoned enough, they'd come around. But you can't reason someone out of what they were never reasoned into. They never accepted you because they never saw you." He took her hand. "I see you." Back at home, they decided to set their own table, not just metaphorically, but literally. Nonso invited a few close friends, Amoka's siblings, and even a few distant cousins who had always treated her with warmth. They called it their new family dinner. They cooked together, laughed freely, and set out extra chairs, not because more people were coming, but as a symbol. A reminder that everyone deserved a seat at a table where love was served without condition. Weeks later, Nonso's father called. His voice was slower, sadder. "We miss you, son." Nonso paused. "Do you miss me, or your control?" There was a long silence. His father finally replied, maybe both. But I'm learning. That was all he said. And that was enough, for now. Amoka never returned to seeking approval. She had learned that being loved shouldn't mean being tolerated. And Nonso. He learned that blood doesn't define loyalty, character does. Their marriage grew stronger, not perfect, but grounded in mutual respect and fierce love. In the end, the woman they excluded became the reason their son found his voice. And though the in-laws had set a table meant to exclude, it only inspired a new one, wider, warmer, and open to anyone who understood that family isn't who shares your blood, but who honors your heart. Sometimes, exclusion isn't the end, it's the beginning of something more honest. Stand for those who stand alone, even if it means standing apart. Because real love doesn't shrink in the shadows. It builds new rooms and sets new tables.